Hello everyone, I welcome you all to this new course which is Field Structural Geology, and this is powered by NPTEL. In this course we will learn different aspect of field structural geology, particularly what we do in the field, and most importantly during the pandemic a large number of students could not go to the field and they did not learn properly the field geology, or to be very specific, field structural geology. So, this course is an endeavor to make up this gap, and we will learn different aspects of structural geology that we study in the field through this course. To start with, this is the team that worked behind this course. Myself is the instructor of this course. My name is Santanu Misra. I am a faculty in the Department of Earth Sciences of IIT Kanpur. You can contact me through this email anytime if you want, and if you would like to know about my research, my laboratory and my other academic activities, you can click at this link. We have two teaching assistants in this course, Rajiv Mukherjee and Tushar Todkar. Rajiv and Tushar, both of them are my PhD student. Rajiv works on nanoindentation and Tushar has just started his doctoral research in my laboratory. Other than that, we have some very important members in this team. Pushpendu Saha, he is a research establishment officer in the Department of Earth Sciences of IIT Kanpur. Pushpendu is a PhD in Earth Sciences and he helped us in different ways, particularly sorting out the field videos and other things. And Badal Pradhan, he is an editing person and also camera person who was with us in the field and took all these videos and other documentation from the field. So, this team worked very closely and coherently to bring you this course for field structural geology. Now, because this is a virtual course, so I hardly have any chance to interact with you all, but what is important or what is required from your side before you join this course or register yourself for this course through NPTEL, I expect these following things from your side as a prerequisite. That means you at least have an idea of different names and their compositions of rocks and minerals that we see in nature, and these you generally learn from a laboratory class in the undergraduate program, that is identification of hand specimens. Then three core subjects of earth sciences: sedimentology, structural geology and metamorphic petrology. I require a very basic ideas of different sedimentary structures like bedding planes, cross beddings, load structure, flute clasts, slumps, ripple marks and so on, so that you know all these things and how do they form. However, in this course we will also show you how do they form and how they are preserved in the rock strata. Structural geology is of course essential. In this particular context, what I expect from you about structural geology, that you more or less know the terminologies that we generally use in structural geology. For example, stress, strain, principal axis of stresses, then bedding planes, foliation, cleavage, different types of lineations, deep, strike, trend, plunge, this kind of terminologies. Of course, we will review all these things in this course very briefly, but it is important that you more or less have an idea that what these terminologies are and what they stand for. In a similar form, metamorphic petrology is also very important, because you know that when the rocks do deform, particularly in the ductile domain, certain degree of metamorphism do happen to the rocks. That means the phases do change, new phases do appear. A very basic idea of different metamorphic phases and their different compositions and characteristic mineral assemblages and rocks are important, that you know all these things. There are some study materials that I would like to recommend before I start this course. I have suggested 3 books here, as you can see. The first one is Field Geology Illustrated by T. Lahey. This is very important book for your overall understanding of general field geology. And the next 2 books, one by Richard Lyle and another co-edited by Angela Coy. These 2 books are mostly based on structural geology, particularly the book of Professor Lyle. And what this particular book suggests is a very general overview of what you should do in the field, together with field ethics and some other aspects. Speaking of basic structural geology and some general aspects, there is a course in place under NPTEL that I taught a couple of years back, that is Structural Geology for undergraduates. So here is the link. You can actually click this, view these lectures, or if you feel interested, you can register and perform through this course to have a better idea about basic structural geology, different elements and so on. What we are going to do in this course, this is a 4 weeks course. That means each week you will have lectures of 2.5 hours, average 2.5 hours, not necessarily we will cover each week 2.5 hours. In 4 different weeks, we will learn 4 different things. In the first week, we will have a very basic introduction together with the tools and gears and some tips and tricks of field geology. Then we will go to the location where we will be doing this field work, or what is the type area that I have selected for you for this course. Then we will go to some very basics like measurements of structural elements. So, we will know about details of how to measure dip, strike, trend, plunge of different planar and linear features. And finally, we will see that how do we represent them in different forms. So, be it in the map or be it through stereo nets. Next week, we will talk about different kinds of primary and secondary structures, and we will also start, or we will also show you the basics of lithostructural mapping. The third week is dedicated essentially to ductile deformation, and we will see superposed deformation and overprinting relationships in the field. And the last week we will talk about brittle deformation, strain measurements, and we will try to interpret the regional deformation. Because we have selected a single place for this work, it is not possible that in a single region you have all kinds of structures. It is not possible that where you have ductile deformation and brittle deformation together. And also it is not possible that we can show you in detail the different metamorphic grades and other things and different structural correlations. So, some important aspects of structural geology will be missing here, but again, if you have a very basic ideas to this course that how to observe structures in the field, essentially you can get other things very easily through some literatures and some other online materials, and essentially from your class teachers. So, let us talk a very brief about what is field geology. As a student of geology, we know that we learn geology best when we go outside our classroom. That does not mean that classroom lectures or classroom learnings are not important. We receive theoretical understandings, we develop our basic ideas about different features of geology, particularly of structural geology in this context of this course, and then we go to the field to see these features disposed in exposures. It is important we learn things from the class and then we check them in the field. And when we learn things from the class, our teachers, they also actually learned from the field. So, all the books of structural geology are written based on the field work and different field studies. Once we go through this, we will learn that field work is very, very important for some personal developments as well. Though we will be learning this in virtual mode, but I am sure you will be doing some field work in future, or you have already done it. In field work, we generally work as a team. So, teamwork is very, very important, and we work together to achieve a common goal. And to do that, we develop also leadership skills, because we distribute our jobs and then we see who is doing what, we assemble together, we discuss, we generate the data, we see them, we plot them, and finally we interpret them. So, this is a very important life skill. And also in the field we do some mistakes, and we learn from these mistakes, and this is also very important. Other than that, you get an excellent exposure of life and society. Because we do field work in different remote areas most of the times, so you visit new places, and most of the times these places are unconventional. That means that these are not kind of touristic places. So, there you go, you meet new people because you need them for your support. You also mix with their culture, with their language, with their food, and so on. So, you enrich yourself with a lot of other experiences other than seeing the rocks. If we talk about that, is field geology relevant today? If you ask this question, and this question may arise to you given the fact that if you look at recent publications or research papers, that most of the things are theoretically derived or observed from the laboratory experiments. So, what is the requirement of field geology? The answer to this question is field geology is extremely important and essential. And the reason is that what we do in the laboratory for experiments, or what we learn from theoretical understandings, the root of these experiments, particularly say for the samples that we use in the experiments, actually come from the field. So, someone went to the field, collected these samples, and we are testing them in the laboratory. And once we test them, we have the results. We also validate our results through the observations from the field. So, field geology is very, very important and an integral part of studying earth sciences. There is no substitution of studying field geology. In this context, field geology can be classified in two different directions. So, one is classical field geology that we will be doing virtually through this course, and another is indirect field geology. In classical field geology, what we do, we observe the rocks in the field. We use our eyes, we use our theoretical understandings from the class, we touch these rocks, we feel them, we test them, and then we gather information. In indirect field geology, we use sophisticated instrumentations, and mostly it is done by geophysicists, for example, seismic observatories and so on. So, another important difference between classical field geology and indirect field geology is that from classical field geology, we gather information from the surface of the rocks. We hardly intend to go observe things at the deeper part of the rock. Sometimes we do drilling and some other things, or do some rock hammering, but that is restricted to a few meters. But in indirect field geology, they really intend to go to the deeper earth. So, the purpose of these two are different, however, they integrate together at one point of time when we assemble everything together. In general, if we have to summarize whatever we have discussed, that we go to the field to see the rocks which are in the field, that means in situ, not drifted rocks. Well, we sometimes see those, but most of the time we try to see the rocks which are in situ in the field. And of course, to see these rocks we travel, we traverse in different ways, we walk, we hike, and if requires we sometimes trek. And while we see these rocks, we gather the information, we exchange, we discuss, we argue, we conclude some things, and essentially we carry to our station rocks, experience, and certainly good and bad memories. So, overall we enjoy in the field, we have fun, and finally we share our experiences and findings. So, the basic aims and objectives of any field study is essentially a function of the research question, but that is essentially a professional field trip. But to understand the basic ideas, the training that we need, we generally try to sequence our activities in these following actions. So, what are written here under primary goals. So, of course, we select a location, then we observe things, we identify, we examine them that what we are observing is right or wrong, and then we measure, we collect different data from this field. These collected things are again investigated, then we compile our observations, we try to interpret, and finally we disseminate our findings through some report. And in professional cases, we write thesis, we write reports, or we publish papers out of our findings. There are some important things that you need to carry in the field irrespective of what you are doing and where you are going. Of course, there are some special kits that you need to carry, which we are not discussing here, but some very basic things that you need to carry are field notebooks, compass, pocket lens and knife, some writing items, measuring tape, basic drawing and writing kits, sample bags, handheld GPS, stereo net, a good camera, some software applications if you have a good mobile phone, nowadays everyone has it, and of course, some essential softwares that you need to install in your laptop if you carry it in the field. Other than that, there are some personal things that you need to carry. I am not reading this, particularly these are important for your own purpose, own belongings, and these are generally being carried by the students and everyone who is joining in the field. And this list may vary from location to location. This list may vary regarding the duration of the field. If you are doing a long time field work, maybe it can change, but this is what I actually recommend my students when they go to the field. I would like to give you some very basic ideas of some of the uses of field equipments or field gears. Of course, I am not going to do things in very detail, but two very important aspects I would like to cover. First one is field notebook and second one is field photography. Field notebook is something that is actually your diary that you note every day, your journal. So, from the very beginning of the day when you hit the exposure, you start noting things there. At the very end of the day, when you come to your camp or hotel or where you are staying or plan to spend your night, you open that field notebook, you try to summarize what you have seen and take important further notes out of it. So, noting field documentation in the field notebook, it is important, or I recommend that it is you be accurate and note everything accurately. Be descriptive, that means whatever you are observing and noting in the field, it must have some evidences, it must be supported by some evidences. It is important that you are organized while writing your field notebook, and for that it is recommended that you plan ahead. So, before going to the field or before you start the field, you organize your symbols that okay, this would be my primer, this is the symbol of primary foliation, secondary foliation, this is different sets of lineations, different sets of axes and so on, different colors that you would like to use for different purpose. And it is also important that you note day or location wise, then you write your data properly, neatly. Say for example, if you are taking the measurements of bedding planes and at the same time you see some secondary planes, for example foliation, you do not want to just jumble them together, right. So, make two separate columns and write them in their assigned locations. it is also important that field notebook is your master file. Say you are taking some photographs, and it is important that you also note that which photographs are being taken from which locations and so on. So, all these things are very, very important in field notebooks that to be organized. Then you record your thoughts. So, maybe you see a structure and you are thinking it may happen this way, then someone said no, it may happen that way. You note down both, because these thoughts should be noted and recorded. And you also try to sync your multiple records, for example, photographs, sketches and summary. Whatever way you can extract information from a particular exposure, it is important that you note them all. And the reason is that before leaving the exposures, you have to load your notebook with all information. Revisiting that particular location may be expensive, and sometimes you may not see this, it is gone. There will be a building sometimes. The second one is field photography. Again, there are many online materials or books and things like that. I am not going into the detail of this, but here are some advices and tips from my side that I observed that the students do, and they need to be corrected and be careful on that. It is very important that you know your device, that which camera you are using. It is a mobile camera or a digital camera or whatever, but it is important that you know your device, that how to take photographs, what are the different settings and so on. It is also important that you check that you have enough memory and enough battery. So, charge your photograph device, battery of the photographic devices in the night. Once you select that, okay, I have to take a photograph from this exposure, make sure that the exposure is clean. There are no dry leaves or grasses and things like that. If you have some small things over there, you try to remove it, clean the exposure so that you get a better photograph. You frame the space properly. That means if I have to have a particular object to photograph, it is better that you take some more space around this. Placing scale, I always or most of the time I see that students place the scale at the middle of their photograph, and they do not select often the right type of scales. For example, if you would like to take a very tiny object, then there is no requirement of placing a big hammer beside that, because two things happen there. The camera, if it is in automatic mode, attracts the hammer and focuses the hammer, not the exposure or not the object that you would like to do. So, it is always important that you place it at one side and work accordingly. You snap multiple photographs with different focal lengths, different exposures and so on, and get the best contrast when you are taking the photographs if it is a raw file. So, you can use daylight, and sometimes you can see that the shadows may be working in different ways or different forms. So, you wait for the sun to be at right place to get best contrast. Sometimes you can use different shadows, you can use umbrellas or towels or some handkerchiefs and so on. And a little trick that if you can add some water, you may, in different kinds of rocks, you may get the better contrast. And this is also very important that you organize at the end of the day your photographs. So, you make nice folders and you also try to sync it with your field notebook. So, these are some little tips that I would like to give you on field photography, but these are not all. You can search online or read some books about field photography and other things. Okay, so, let us talk about some important tools that we use in the field. The first one is essentially geological compass. And in the field we use geological compass for mostly two purposes. One is measuring the bearings, the front bearing and back bearings. These are used to locate yourself in the topo map, and sometimes also to look at other object in the topo map that you see in the field. And the second one is essentially measuring structural elements. That means measuring dip, strike, dip direction, trend, plunge, etc., etc. Generally in the field we use different types of compasses, or let us say in other ways that there are different types of compasses available in the market. And here I I am showing you 4 different compasses. The first one that is commonly used, at least I got trained with this compass and I like this compass very well, that is basic clinometer that you see in your screen and also now in my hand. So, a basic clinometer is a very basic device, but it is very, very important. What you see here, you have a circular disc which is printed at the base, and in the print you see that there are grids. So, it starts from 0 to 360 degree, and then you have some other grid that is important, that is 0 is here. So, 0 to 90 degree in this direction and 0 to 90 degree in this direction. So, these are for readings. Now, what you would read? You would read the 2 different things with this compass. One is azimuth and another is inclination. So, therefore, the name is clinometer. So, azimuth you measure with this magnetic needle, this north south needle, you make it horizontal and then you see this. Now, this compass does not come with any spirit level or bubbles. I will show you in the next compass that comes with, but you can look at it by when you see that this needle is swinging freely. Then you use the clinometer with this little hanging object that you see, and again to make sure that this is vertical, you are holding it vertical with respect to the plane you are measuring, that this hanging things should be hanging freely. This is known as the bridge. So, once you pack it, it remains horizontal, but otherwise you make it like this when you have to measure bearings. So, we have 2 slits, one slit in this side very narrow and little wider slit on the other side, and in this side you also see there is a little string attached, and this string, so in the image you can see the string is here. Okay. So, this is index string that you can see here, and these you observe it and see through the object that you would like to take bearings of. So, front or back, and depending on whether you are taking back bearing or front bearing, you may rotate the compass towards the object, or you can subtract your data by 180 degrees or add your data by 180 degrees. The next compass that I am going to show you is another commonly used compass, and nowadays we all use it, that is called Brunton Compass. So, in this image we see that it is little different and it is little bigger and also looks little sophisticated. So, this is how it looks like. So, when it is packed, it comes in this form, and then you open it this way. This is how you open, and this is exactly what you see in your screen. So, it goes like this. So, it has many different components which are marked here. In the next slide you will see actually what is inside the dial itself, but I will show you some other features here before we go to the dial. In clinometer we had this bridge, but here we use this little piece with a hole here, and this one, this is called eyesight, as you can see here, as the bridge. At the same time we have a hole here as well. This is also a viewing sight. So, through this you can also see this, your objects that you are actually looking at. Then you have a mirror here. The mirror is used because when you are looking at this way, so by tilting the mirror you can see the reading through this. So, because you do not have to move your compass and see the readings this way, you can directly see the reading through the mirror. Other than that, the mirror is useful for a field geologist if you are in the field for quite a long time. For men, you can make your beard with this, you can shape your hair with this. So, this is very, very important, and I personally use another trick, that if you would like to call your colleague somewhere who is far and you do not want to shout, you can actually reflect the sun through this mirror and call your friend. So, these are some other purposes that are innovative and you can use through this. So, let us look at what is inside this. So, inside this you have again in a very similar design that we have seen in clinometer. We have this dial, and you can see here that this is 0, and then we have a 360 degree grid, and then we have 90 290 via 0. So, here plus 90 and here also plus 90. This inside grid is used for clinometer. This is the clinometer that you see here. This magnetic needle is used for measuring the azimuth. Okay. So, to make sure that your compass is horizontal, we have a spirit level inside and this we call bull's eye level, and then to make sure that your clinometer is perfectly vertical, we have a long spirit level, and here you can see the bubble here. So, these are useful for making sure that you are measuring things when it is required the compass to be horizontal, when it is required the compass to be vertical. Now, other than these two commonly used compasses, people do use some other type of compasses. So, another one that I am going to show you is Silva Compass. So, the company that makes it, Silva, and this is something very interesting in the sense that in the other two compasses that we have seen, their dial is fixed both in clinometer and Brunton, but in this kind of compasses you can actually rotate the dial and fix the orientation and measure it. You also have a mirror here, and bearings and other things you take through these compasses, but generally it is used in this form. So, you have a hole here as well, you have a mirror, you have a slit here or line here. You also have a bull's eye here to make sure that your compass is horizontal. You also can measure the depth with this compass making in a different way. There is a little magnifier here that you can use to see the rocks or minerals if you want to. So, you do not have to carry a hand lens separately. So, yeah, that is it, and it has some grids on different sides. So, in inches or in centimeters and so on. So, this is very useful, very light, but yes, it is expensive. The other one that I would like to show you is the Stratum Compass. That is little heavy. It is very simple, but extremely sophisticated. So, the clinometer and the Brunton Compass, the dial does not have any medium other than air inside. The Silva Compass and the Stratum Compasses, they have some fluid inside. So, that makes the magnetic needle stable very fast, but still we have some switches here, some press switches that fixes or releases the magnetic needle quickly. What is important here that you do not see any clinometer, right. So, nothing is here to measure the inclination, but in this type of compasses the inclination is measured directly. So, you have this plane. So, for example, this is the plane that you would like to measure. So, you take it like this and then you make it horizontal like this, and then you can read through these grids here which are marked here. So, this is a vertical or inclination scale, and this is much more straightforward through this campus. In this course we will be mostly using the Brunton compass. You will see when we are measuring the data and other things, and our demonstration of measuring deep strike and other things you will see also we will use this Brunton compass. We have made a list of all these things, but I would like to show you some figures. These are mostly the things that I carry in the field. So, most of them are mine. We carry different types of chisels and two different hammers. So, this is a small one and this is a bigger one to mostly break the rocks and collect the samples. Once we collect the samples, we keep them in sample bags. We try to identify minerals through this hand lens. We measure things using different type of scales, and if we map, then we carry a large board with some clips so that the paper is fixed here. All writing materials, pen and drawing things I generally keep in this bag, and of course, field maps are also very important, the topo maps and other things. Other than this, nowadays with the advancement of technology, you can use some applications, and here are some applications that I use. These are mobile applications. So, Lambert is something that is very commonly used, but it only works with iOS operating system. These three you can use in Androids. GPS tools is one of the very important applications where actually you can see a lot of different things about your locations. You can also check your headings and other things, and if your compass is not working, these GPS tools actually can help you to give you the directions of your traverse and so on. Field Move and Clino, these two are essentially made for field geology. These are available in Google Play Stores and you can download them. They are free and you can substitute many of these things with this. So, it measures the data, you can put the name of your structure that you are measuring, it stores, it does the analysis by itself, that means it plots things in the stereo net, and most importantly you can carry all the data from your applications to your computer for further research. So, with this I finish this lecture, the first introductory lecture for this course, yet we did not go to the field, but in the next lecture what we are going to learn is we will see mostly the area where we will be working. So, wait for the next lecture. Until then, thank you, stay safe.